Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty to talk about as we look at the Browns. Combine coming up, free agency after that, draft after that. Andrew Berry will be a busy guy a little later in the show. Eddie McDonald from Dawg Pound Daily will join us. But we begin by talking Browns with the Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com and Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, as always, appreciate the time. So you wrote an interesting article, 5 lessons for the Browns from Super Bowl 56. First one, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, elite quarterback play is essential. Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously number one. I think that these playoffs, these championship games, and this Super Bowl, if it taught us anything, it's that you really have to have that elite quarterback play. And I think that that is so vitally important for the Cleveland Browns. Now, whether they get it from Baker Mayfield or they get it from someone else, that is exactly what they need to have. So they're going to be trying to determine what they can do to help Baker Mayfield get back to where he needs to be to play at that sort of higher level, maybe not necessarily elite level, but a higher level for him. And they will also, in between now and then, be trying to determine if there is any way that they can upgrade. And they have to. They have to look around. I mean, he's heading into the final year of his contract, so they can't just leave that to chance. If someone becomes available that they think is an upgrade, they will have to look into it.
Number 2 kind of goes hand in hand with the elite quarterback play. Crazy good wide receiver or a combo that is vital. And every team in the playoffs seemed to have that element.
Yeah, there was you could see that there was a quarterback receiver combo that really lit it up for each one of these teams in most cases. And I think that is so vitally important. I mean, even when you look back to the Cleveland Browns of yesteryear, they went 10-6 when they had Derek Anderson throwing 16 touchdown passes to Braylon Edwards. You need to have that. You need to be able to score the football. Jamar Chase is the reason why Joe Burrow is who he was. I mean, Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp connected for 16 touchdown passes. I mean, that's incredible. That's going to get you into a lot of victories and into the playoffs. And he obviously helped them win the Super Bowl. So the Browns need to get that. And I think that is going to be the number one priority in the offseason. If they think they need to, if they're going to keep Baker Mayfield, then the number one priority obviously is going to be receiver after that. If they don't feel they can get the job done with Baker Mayfield, then the number one priority is to find the quarterback. But those two things, that battery, the quarterback to the receiver, is the way they need to go.
Yeah, and again, the league is kind of tilted towards the passing game as far as the rules go, so you have to have a pass offense. Number 3 on your list, a more menacing edge rusher, and that goes to combat the passing games.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and what I mean by that is, Miles is so fearsome and so great at sacking the quarterback, but he needs to take it up a notch in terms of getting those takeaways, batting those passes down, forcing those fumbles, getting those strips, and just making a little bit more of those impact plays. And if they don't get those from him, then they needed to get those from the guy on the other side or from somewhere else. They need more takeaways. I think it should come from Miles. I think he has the opportunity to hit another gear. When you pick someone like that, number 1 overall, passing up some good quarterbacks along the way to draft him in 2017, and you call him a generational player, then you have to take it up to that level. We view Aaron Donald as a generational player, right? Maybe one of the best defenders ever. Well, I think Miles can get there. I think he can get close to being at that level and really challenge this year for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. But in order for him to do that, he has to take over games. He has to wreak havoc, throughout pretty much every game. And then very importantly, he must stay strong until the end. He's got to be playing his best football in the final 6 games of the season. And I think that's vitally important. And then into the playoffs. That's what you've seen Aaron Donald do. It's almost like some of these guys, they can save that 5th gear until they get down into that final home stretch and into the playoffs because they need to expend so much energy to play at that level. And I think he can do it, but he's going to have to pace himself maybe a little better.
Number 4 on your 5 lessons, a money kicker. That was evident throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, boy, where do you find another Evan McPherson? It changes the game for you, okay? It changes your strategy when you know you have a kicker that can consistently make the 50-plus kick. And, you know, maybe more importantly, that can consistently make the 40 to 49 kick too, right? Because that is where the Browns really, really struggled this past year with Chase McLaughlin. So that's what they have to do. They've got to go out and they've got to find themselves a kicker. And, you know, they've got a few extra draft picks here and there. If you have to draft one, go ahead and draft one. If you can end up with an Evan McPherson, you know, I'll tell you what, you won't regret it when, you know, when you're needing to make those extra points and needing to make those kicks or needing to make the game-winning kick in overtime. So it's something that they have to have this offseason.
Yeah, and this offseason in particular, almost after the first round, I think all the games were within 3 points. So that goes to that. And your 5th lesson from the Super Bowl, an excellent offensive line is needed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think that, you know, that we could see that with Joe Burrow. You know, you can hold up so long, only so long. And then when the chips were really down and they needed to win the football game, you know, that was the one element that they probably didn't have. And I think that defenses are getting better. Teams have recognized that not only do you need an explosive offense these days to go all the way, but you need a defense that can stop an explosive offense. And I think the Browns are focusing on that on both sides of the ball. But with defenses getting so much better now, you really have to have that good offensive line. And I'll tell you, the Cincinnati Bengals are not going to be able to keep Joe Burrow healthy if they don't rectify that situation for themselves. The Browns, on the other hand, they also have a few decisions to make. Now, I've been told that Jack Conklin should be ready to start this season. I don't think there are any guarantees of that. That's the aim and the hope, but I don't think that you can, you know, write that in stone right now coming off of a torn patella. And then they have to hope that Jed Wills comes back really super strong from his ankle issues. And then I think they'll be okay along the offensive line. They also have to make a decision on whether or not they want to stick with center J.C. Treader or save a few $9 million bucks, and go with Nick Harris or someone else as their center for next season. So these are some decisions that they have to make. But, you know, they figured out heading into the Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski regime that they wanted to be really, really super strong on the offensive and defensive lines. And I think the Super Bowl shows just how important that is.
All right. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. A viewer with a question about Baker Mayfield and chemistry with his wide receivers.
Dave, you're doing a really outstanding job. My question of it is if we draft, hopefully in the 13th round, you know, granted that we get Garrett Wilson, do you think Baker Mayfield, you know, can have that chemistry with him? I don't know. Hopefully they can answer that during the training camp. But I don't know. I really like Treylon Burks in that draft outside of Garrett Wilson. I don't know. You tell me what you think, Chief.
All right. As always, we appreciate all the voicemails. And Mary Kay, I think it's important to get a rookie wide receiver that you can develop that chemistry with, because I think that's probably the best way for Baker Mayfield to get chemistry. A guy who's coming in trying to learn the NFL, and Baker can kind of guide him the way they do things in this offense.
Yeah, you know what? There are so many good receivers in this class, too. It is a really good, strong receiver class. Now, there might not be necessarily the Jamar Chase. There might not necessarily be the Justin Jefferson, but there are some very, very good receivers, and we know who some of them are because a lot of people watch the Ohio State Buckeyes. So, you know, we've seen the Garrett Wilsons, the Chris Olavs, then there's the Trey Burks, and there are some other ones. I advocated in one of my my initial 3-round mock that we're doing. Some of us at cleveland.com, most of us on the Browns team, are doing a 3-round mock once a week, starting last week and leading all the way up to the draft. And, just I'm trying to mix it up a little bit and maybe, start out with some things that get some discussion going. And one of the things that I had was them trading back up into the first round and taking Alabama's Jamison Williams. And he probably would have been the first receiver off the board in this draft had he not torn his ACL in the national championship game. So it's a bit of a controversial pick, but ACL injuries aren't what they used to be. Now you can go have your ACL surgery and you're back somewhere within 6 to 9 months. And for the most part, as we saw with Joe Burrow, you can come out and play some really darn good football in the season after your torn ACL. We also saw that with Odell Beckham Jr. and others this season. So I don't think that that's a sentence to not play well for Jamison this year. I think he probably will be back next year, maybe if not in the first 2-3 weeks, at some time early on in the season. And I think he's a player that could really help you. So, if you think you could get your hands on the best receiver in this draft, I would consider trading up to get him.
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll talk more about that 3-round mock draft that you did a little bit later in the show. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we're going to take a look at some free agents and some names that are starting to get associated with the Browns going out and acquiring. Sports4CLE. Talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the defense and free agency.
Hi, this is Phil. Thought I'd take a crack at the defense this week, or at least the D-line. I like the idea on your show of acquiring outside linebacker / defensive end Harold Landry opposite of Myles Garrett. Will cost the same as J.D. Clowney, but will likely be a longer deal. Landry is younger, has only missed one game in his career, and stat-wise actually had a better year than Clowney last year. Am I the only fan scared to death watching Clowney, wondering if he was going to get up off the turf after each play? Also, there's a free agent out there, defensive end Jerry Hughes, might be a Tack McKinley replacement as a third down pass rusher. It's up there in the years, but can still play, just on a one-year contract, same as Tack did last year. As far as the D tackle positions, I'd look to sign free agent San Francisco's DJ Jones and free agent defensive tackle Washington's Tim Settle. Both can handle the middle versus the run and are affordable, especially Tim Settle. Or my question would be to you guys, is defensive tackle Jordan Elliott ready to start this year? Looking for established D-line players basically on this end. The back seven of defense just needs depth overall if Jacob Phillips is ready to handle the inside linebacker spot. And please, we need to sign hometown corner Denzel Ward to a long-term deal. Appreciate the time. Bye now.
All right, we always appreciate the voicemail. So what about it, Mary Kay? I think let's start with Denzel Ward. I think they're interested. The question is, how much is it going to cost of Jimmy Haslam's money? It's probably quite a bit of it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of it, but I think they're prepared to pay it. I think that it's hard to find excellent lockdown corners like Denzel. He's homegrown. He's from Cleveland. He's everything that you want in a player on and off the field. And I think that that they will do everything they can to make sure that they re-sign Denzel Ward and extend him. It'll probably be somewhere in the $19 million a year range, but I think they'll go ahead and do that. That'll be a nice feel-good move for them in the offseason. And I do foresee that happening. So, yeah, I think that's something that people can look forward to.
Yeah, and, Jordan Elliott, that's to be determined. Is he ready to play? If he is, Browns clearly liked him. They took him third-round pick a couple of years ago. Let's take a look at Pro Football Focus's NFL Top 50 free agents and landing spots. And one of the guys that the caller talked about is on there, Jadeveon Clowney. They predict the Browns 1 year, $15 million, $12 million guaranteed. If I'm Andrew Berry, I'm tempted to try to get him for a couple of years and even lower that $15 million figure. I know he has the injury history, and that's a concern. But he was pretty healthy, and he seems to fit in well. Do you think the Browns are interested in getting him at more than a year if possible?
Well, yeah, they probably would want to do that if they could spread it out over a couple of years. The thing that I don't know is if they're going to want to go that high. No, if they're going to want to go up to $15 million a year. Now, they might. I mean, he exceeded expectations this year with his 9 sacks. I mean, really nobody ever thought he was going to do that when he'd only had 3 in his previous 19 games. So he was definitely worth the money this year, and we'll just have to see if they're willing to go that high. If not, they will look for another really good complementary pass rusher.
Yeah, and again, he might get there. Remember, all you need is one team to think, boy, he could really do something, and somebody could give him 2 or 3 years at 14 or 15 million. It only takes one team in free agency to kind of throw off the salary structure there.
Yeah, and there are other things to consider too. Defenders want to know that they're going to win. Defenders are going to look around at other positions on the team, make sure that they like what they see there. And then, there are family considerations, weather considerations. And so I think he'll throw all of that into the hopper. Now, I know he did like playing here. I know he did like playing with Myles Garrett, but, he also wants to win and go to a Super Bowl. And I think he's going to keep an eye on how things go at certain positions, including quarterback, and make sure that he feels really confident and comfortable that this team is poised to make the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl.
All right, let's take a look at a couple of pass catchers that are also on this top 50 free agent list. One, David Njoku. Now, they have the Chargers signing him 3 years, $37.5 million, $25.5 million guaranteed. And then Christian Kirk, wide receiver currently with the Cardinals. They have the Browns signing him 3 years, $35 million, 24 of it guaranteed. All right, Mary Kay, first Njoku. I know the Browns, again, would like to sign him. I don't know how much they really want to pay in free agency. And again, he's somebody that somebody could throw a lot of money at.
Yes, because another team might view him as their number 1 tight end, which is what he wants to be. He was a first-round pick. The Browns traded up into the first round to get him. He wants to be the featured tight end. Right now, he really isn't that there because Austin Hooper has that distinction in Cleveland. He is higher paid. He's making $10.5 million a year. David is going to want more than that. He's going to want to be the number 1 tight end here or somewhere. So I think it will come down to the money, and he might want to test the free agent waters to see what he can get elsewhere. If he doesn't get exactly what he wants, I think he knows he can re-sign here. But I think he's one of those players that will get paid.
No, and Christian Kirk's an interesting one. A younger wide receiver, pass-happy offense with the Cardinals. He's an intriguing option, I think. And again, more of a slot guy than a guy that stretches the field, but he's got a little bit of speed.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and if you are going to be parting ways with Jarvis Landry, and we don't know for sure yet if that's going to happen, but if you're going to be parting ways with Jarvis Landry, then, like you said, you're going to be in need of a slot receiver like that. And Christian Kirk certainly would fit the bill for that. And he's one of several that I think they should be looking at in free agency. Once again, you're going to have to give these guys some assurance in addition to the money that they're going to get the targets that they want and have an opportunity to, make the Pro Bowl and try to get to a Super Bowl. So that's everybody's goal. Those are the things that free agents look for.
All right, so we're going to take a look at ideal offseason trade scenarios for every NFL team. This is from the Bleacher Report, 3 of them for the Browns. They have them trading for Amari Cooper. And they mentioned the Browns could save nearly $15 million by cutting Landry. Could use that newfound cap flexibility, some draft picks to acquire a true number one receiver in Amari Cooper. What are your thoughts on that? My question would be, what's it going to cost you in terms of trade? I like Cooper. Just your thoughts on that?
I like Amari. Yeah, I like Amari Cooper. I like him, and I like players of that caliber. So whether it's him or someone else, whether you try to land a Chris Godwin or somebody like that, I really think that in addition to drafting a top-notch wide receiver, that they are going to need to bring in at least one or two pretty good veterans, and one of them should be one that is going to be successful and can catch the ball and score the football for you, and that it's not a projection, and he's proven and gone to Pro Bowl. So I do like Amari Cooper in that regard, and I do like others as well. But you've got to get one of those guys. And the competition for those players will be fierce once again because of what we just saw in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. Everybody knows that they need those kinds of players.
All right, we're going to take a look at two players that they have the Browns trading away. First of all, they say the Seahawks trade for center J.C. Tretter. We kind of alluded to that as far as cap savings and those kind of things. And they also have the Tennessee Titans trading for wide receiver Jarvis Landry. Again, another cap-saving move. And if the Browns front office could potentially do that, that's a good way of lowering the salary cap, getting back assets, and kind of moving on, as opposed to, well, we couldn't renegotiate, so we move on, we don't get any assets back. So trading those two, if they can find ways to get assets for him, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. But, in the case of Jarvis Landry, he does have a cap hit of over $16 million next year, 16.79 or something or 16.37 or something along those lines. So in order to actually make some kind of a deal, somebody would have to be willing to renegotiate his contract and restructure it and give him some guaranteed money. And it would have to be something like that, where somebody was willing to pay him some money and give him what he wants. This is not, a team is really not going to just take on a $16 million cap hit for next year for a receiver coming off of a down season who is turning 30. But there are things that can happen. And then J.C. Tretter, yeah, I'm sure that he would be attractive in a trade like that, because that's a $9 million cap hit is not a ton of money for a really good, durable starting center. So I could see a team doing something like that. And I could see the Browns possibly parting ways because, Nick Harris has shown some promise. He had a good start in place of J.C. Tretter. Maybe it's time for him to step in there, and the Browns can save a few pennies that way.
Yeah, without question. A very good point about Landry as well. Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out on the other side of the break. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. A couple questions about the offense. Take a look at a tweet from Jarvis Landry. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Kevin Stefanski's offense.
How you doing? This is E.T., born and raised Cleveland Browns fan. I was watching the show the other day, and I saw that someone said that Kevin Stefanski ruined Baker. I don't believe that, because in his first year they took him to the playoffs. Now I believe that Stefanski never had a truly great quarterback. With Baker, Kirk Cousins so limited you can't open the playbook. Now I do believe that the weapons are a problem. I truly don't know if Baker is the answer, but I do believe being limited just in ability might not be able to get it done with Stefanski.
Yeah, again, we appreciate the voicemail, and Mary Kay, that's a tough call. Does Kevin Stefanski's system limit quarterbacks, or has Kevin Stefanski's system been limited by the quarterbacks they've had? And that's, again, the bottom line is you got to find a way to play to your quarterback's strength in any offensive system.
I think the example that you can look at is Sean McVay. When you have a Jared Goff, you do certain things. When you have a Matt Stafford, you do other things. Maybe you throw deep a little bit differently or a little bit more often. So, and I think Kevin Stefanski is the exact same way. I think that if he has a quarterback and receivers that can run an explosive offense, he will try to do more of that and play more, multiple wides and three wides, whatever. I think if he feels like he needs to play three tight ends and he has the best three tight ends that, those are better than his receivers at the time, then he'll go that route. So I think he does try to play to the strengths of his football team. And if he finds himself with a dual threat quarterback, he'll run a dual threat offense. I mean, look, Kyle Shanahan just went out and traded for Trey Lance last year. And so they will be running a different kind of scheme. And he has done that before. He's coached, Robert Griffin and different kinds of quarterbacks. So I think that Kevin is the same way. I think all of these guys that come out of that West Coast, Kyle Shanahan, Gary Kubiak offense will tailor it to the quarterback that they have and the personnel that they have. So I don't think Kevin Stefanski will limit a quarterback in any way, shape, or form. I do think he's going to need to demonstrate to receivers that he will, that he will be able to showcase them and get them the ball more often and make sure that they have the kind of career that they want to have if you want to attract those quality free agent receivers. But I think he's smart enough to play to the strengths of his personnel.
Yeah, and again, keep in mind, Kevin Stefanski was Coach of the Year just one season ago. I know the Browns were 8-9. He was Coach of the Year before that when they went to the playoffs. All right, this is from one of your Hey Mary Kay articles. Question that you were asked: what went wrong in the Browns locker room last year? How does the coaching staff prevent it from happening again?
Well, I actually think that what went wrong in the locker room last year had a lot to do with the departure of Odell Beckham Jr. and how that all went down. And I think that there was probably some thought on the part of some players that maybe Baker Mayfield didn't throw the ball to Odell or didn't showcase him the way that he possibly could have. And I think that left a bad taste in the mouths of some players. I think that there was a little bit of a disconnect at times between the offense and the defense, because we heard the defensive players tell us that at the end of the season, that they did feel that way, that they need to get closer between the two units. And I heard Joe Burrow in the playoffs say that, that type of thing, he believes that's on the quarterback. The quarterback has to set the tone for the culture of the football team. And Baker's always been known as a great leader. He was always known as a unifier and somebody that brought everyone on the football team together, and everybody's always followed him. But I think that took a bit of a hit in 2021 through the Odell Beckham Jr. situation. So they need to mend those fences. They need to bring that team back together, get the camaraderie going. It's going to be up to Kevin. It's going to be up to Baker. It's going to be up to the defensive guys to reach across the aisle, reach across the locker room, and make sure that they're doing what they can and vice versa. And, it's time to move on past that and put this football team back together.
Yeah, and you never hear, I won't say never, you rarely hear of chemistry issues when teams are winning. It's always when you're not winning is when that chemistry issue seems to arise. All right, let's take a look at this tweet from Jarvis Landry. And it sounds like a fortune cookie to me, or something Confucius might say. Sometimes you can overplay your part, but not until you see they don't deserve it will you understand what that means. Would this be the definition of a cryptic tweet, Mary Kay?
Yeah, and it's not the first. I mean, Jarvis puts those kinds of tweets out to get everybody thinking, get everybody guessing what he's thinking. Sometimes these guys, just like to mix it up a little bit, slow news day, quiet time. Sometimes those guys like to do that sort of thing. He's not the only one that does that, but Occasionally, every couple weeks or so, you'll see something like that. Sometimes they turn out to be lyrics to a song. Sometimes they turn out to be lines from a movie, and you can never really guess what a guy is thinking when you read a tweet like that, because sometimes it means nothing and sometimes it means everything.
That's I guess that's how you get 1 million followers on Twitter and Instagram, is those kind of things every once in a while. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the draft season. Mary Kay has done a 3-round mock draft. We'll talk about that. Also, head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Browns beat reporter for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer, Mary Kay Cabot. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns passing game.
If Baker Mayfield could not get the ball to Odell Beckham, why don't we get a new quarterback rather than another wide receiver? Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, and as always, we appreciate the voicemails. Mary Kay, I don't think it's as simple as that. And again, I guess maybe what I'm wondering, who, after Odell left, is Donovan Peoples-Jones our number one? Because Jarvis was was banged up. And this team lacked a true number one. Odell was playing number two to Cooper Kupp in Los Angeles. It's not as simple as Baker couldn't get Odell the ball.
No, it's not that simple. It's not that simple at all. But yes, it did turn out to be Donovan Peoples-Jones had to step into that X receiver role, which is not really what his strength is or what he's designed to do. So, when I think Donovan will get better too when he goes back to sort of being that third receiver. But yeah, Baker Mayfield needs a good, bona fide, deep threat X receiver, and they didn't really have that guy after Odell left. They could have given some of the speedy go routes to Anthony Schwartz, but he was he had a concussion for the whole 3 weeks after Odell left. So they could not just plug him right in there. So therefore, they were left without that real nice deep threat, and defenses were able to take advantage of that. They stacked the box a little bit. Defenses did not respect the passing game. That was pretty obvious. And all of that has to change this offseason, and it will.
Yeah, and again, the way I kind of envision it is, which of our wide receivers threaten a defense? When you look at the Rams, it's Cooper Kupp. When you look at the Bengals, it's Jamar Chase. When you look at the Chiefs, it's Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. There isn't really anybody, once Odell left, who defenses said, man, this guy's really going to, where is he at on the field?
That's absolutely true. They did not have that guy. And the guys that they did have were not making the plays that they would normally make, and that made it really difficult. I mean, even down the stretch, you could see that Donovan Peoples-Jones wasn't catching the ball in the way that he was expected to. I mean, we all thought that Donovan Peoples-Jones was really going to have an off-the-charts season, and for whatever reason, he struggled a little bit down the stretch, and so did Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper had a difficult time kind of hanging on to the ball at times. So even the guys that were out there, that should be able to challenge a defense, they weren't doing it as at a high of level as they should have. So it was just kind of a challenging season all the way around.
All right, so you had mentioned earlier in the first segment that everybody at cleveland.com that covers the Browns regularly doing mock drafts from now until the draft in April. So let's say your first one, round one, a little bit of a surprise pick here. You have the Browns going Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty, and you mentioned big risk, an intriguing developmental prospect, a guy who's a dual threat guy. From Liberty, so you look at him as somebody that you need to develop. Just your thoughts behind Willis, and if he's sitting there at 13, how hard it might be to pass on if you're the Browns.
Well, first of all, let me say that this exercise that we're doing in terms of these 3-round mocks, we're going to have to be doing one every single week between now and the beginning of, now in the draft at the end of April. So, when the other 3 reporters doing these mock drafts put theirs out, they all went with sort of what we would expect, and that would be a receiver in the first round, whether Garrett Wilson or someone else. So in the interest of shaking it up a little bit, I went with Malik Willis at number 13 because I had, recently come home from the Senior Bowl. I watched him operate. I watched the ball come out. I watched his athleticism. I watched him deal with people, teammates, family members, and I liked a lot of what I saw. So in the interest of this first mock, I figured, why not just throw him in there at number 13 overall, which I don't think would be the worst pick in the world, because if he does turn into something and you find yourself with 2 good quarterbacks, so be it. And if he doesn't, I think a quarterback is at times worth taking a chance on in the first round. You can recover from it these days. You don't have to pay these guys $70 million a year like you used to. So yeah, I think it's a chance worth taking. It's something that I would at least think about doing. Now, the bad part about it is the drawback, of course, is that you're not going to then be able to take your Garrett Wilson there in the first round. And that's probably the worst part about this option. So as I move along through the weeks, I might not stick with this, but for purposes of the first one, it's food for thought.
Now, you have the Browns trading back into the first round to answer the question of, well, who are you going to get at wide receiver? You have a trade with Philadelphia. They have multiple picks in the first round. And you have the Browns taking Jamison Williams from Alabama. And we've talked about torn ACL in the title game. So he's going to be ready close to the beginning of the season because he had the operation done. And by all accounts, if he's healthy, he's probably viewed as the number 1 receiver in this draft, at least really close to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's right up there. Now, is he, as good as a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson in the previous couple of years in terms of being the best? Maybe he is. We'll see. He certainly seems to have the potential to be that. And so I just thought, this might be something kind of interesting. Come back in that first round and still get your receiver. And you might have to wait for him a little bit because he's coming off of a torn ACL. You might have to wait a couple weeks into the season, a month into the season, but the payoff could be tremendous. Now, you're going to have some other guys. You're going to have to be able to go out and sign a couple of free agents. You're going to have to take a receiver, in the third round as well that you can plug in, pretty quickly. And maybe hope that Anthony Schwartz becomes a little bit more for you than what he was able to be last year because of injuries. And you have to hope that Donovan Peoples-Jones rebounds and, is a little bit better than he was down the stretch last year. So you have some pieces, but I think that this could be something interesting as well.
And then in the third round, you have Deangelo Malone, edge rusher, linebacker, Western Kentucky. And that would kind of be a younger guy to potentially replace Tack McKinley, who was injured. What do you like about him?
Well, I was looking at this pick as more of the third edge rusher. Now, if this is not their number 78 overall pick in the third round, because they gave that up in this first mock to draft Jamison Williams. So this is the comp pick. It's actually almost like a fourth round pick. So it's late. It's between the third and fourth rounds, and it's in the 100s. And so I thought this was a good place to take that third edge. And this player does remind me a little bit of Tack in terms of, long, almost a lean, just edge rusher that can come in and do mostly that third down type of thing, and just really fast and explosive off the ball. And I thought that was a really good element, just that element of speed on defense. You really want that with so many of these speedy players now that they have on these offenses to counter with that type of thing. And that's what they liked about Tack. And I think they could get it with Malone.
Yeah. Before we let you go, ideal landing spots for top running backs, this one according to the Bleacher Report. They have Dearness Johnson, a restricted free agent, ending up with the Chargers. May hinge on how the Browns choose to tender Johnson. And second-round tender probably not too rich. First-round tender certainly wouldn't be so. Projected to have $57 million in cap space, second most in the NFL. We had a caller a couple weeks ago who thought if the Browns sign him, Johnson might be a guy that had some trade value, and that makes a lot of sense. I think Dearness Johnson probably proved he's a guy that deserves more carries than probably the Browns can give him as the third running back with his performance this year when he was called on.
Yeah, they really like him, but if they could get something for him, if they could get something in terms of a trade for him, that might be something good that they could do, especially because I think they believe that Kareem Hunt will be back healthy this year. And obviously there aren't going to be enough carries to go around for those three guys. So if you can get something out of it, fine. If not, if you see him as your developmental young back, then you don't want to part with him. You want to, just ride it out with him and have him maybe replace a Kareem Hunt down the road.
Yeah, so in other words, you don't give them away, but if somebody gives you something you think can make you a better team, you're all ears. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you read her pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns with Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns passing attack.
And my takes is regarding Baker Mayfield. He has to go because we could have talented playmakers on this roster like Hooper, Landry, Peoples-Jones, Schwartz, Njoku. But these guys will never flourish with a mediocre quarterback like Baker. He's the problem, and I fear we'll start losing guys like Hooper, just like we lost Beckham, and then realize the problem was Baker Mayfield, the quarterback. Just my 2 cents. Thanks for the time. Love the show.
And again, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. Eddie, it's kind of the chicken and the egg. Is it the quarterback play or is it the wide receivers? It's not as simple as I don't think it's as simple as Baker can't play. There's a lot going on there that needs to be tweaked and corrected.
Sure. First and foremost, thanks for having me on again. Much appreciated. Second off, shout out Mary Kay. Tremendous at what she does. I know she gets a lot of flack online, undeservedly so. Shout out to her. She's very knowledgeable, and she's the pinnacle of what a lot of us are trying to reach. So now to get that out of the way, it is like the chicken and the egg scenario. We have two sides of it. One is you can look at the 2018 rookie season and the 2020 season, the playoff run. Baker was incredible then. 2019, 2021, not so much. You know, we had all these playmakers. We had Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper. We went out and signed in free agency a couple years ago to a big money contract. And it's not just Baker who isn't living up to it. It's those guys as well. And you have you have a lot of fans. It's very divided right now. You know, you have what they call the Baker bros on social media and then the Baker haters. And then you can fall anywhere in between that. It's sort of like a Venn diagram. You can be on one side, the other, or in the middle somewhere. And I think that's where I'm at in the middle. And it's really the chicken and the egg, like you said. And if it's Mayfield in 2022, then he has to play a lot better. And if it's not him, then if it's someone else, then are they going to be able to get guys like Austin Hooper and Jarvis Landry the ball? If Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper are on the team come September. Yeah,
and the flip side of it is it's a little bit of the scheme. You got to. In watching the games, it wasn't like there was a lot of separation all of the time. You know what I mean? There are plays where you can say this guy was open, without question. I'm not saying Baker Mayfield played well, but it isn't as simple as he's holding back the playmakers. The playmakers, that's got to be upgraded. The wide receivers got to be upgraded. And that kind of dovetails. You wrote an interesting article, what the Browns need to do to reach the Super Bowl next season. So take us through that and that kind of let's go from there.
Sure. So first and foremost, the first thing I wrote about was Baker Mayfield. And actually, it's the quarterback play in general. If that's Baker Mayfield in 2022, then okay, we're going to have to get on board with it. But he has to know himself, and he might want to stay off social media, that there's going to be high criticism of him and high expectations of him. So what he's going to have to do is play obviously way better, get back to 2020 form, a little bit of the 2018 form, mostly 2020 because that's when Stefanski was in the system. He was in Stefanski's system. But if it's not Baker Mayfield, that play has to be upgraded with whoever it is that they go out and attempt to get. And as Mary Kay mentioned earlier, they have to at least explore the options. If they feel there's someone that is going to be better quarterback for this football team than Baker Mayfield, they have to explore every option they can to get to that point. And if it's not, if they feel that, you know, they look through it and trade scenarios don't happen and free agents don't happen, then you run it back with Baker and you know sort of what you're going to get, but sort of not really what you're going to get. And like you just said, it is schematically, you know, things go schematically wrong and whatnot. But a lot of people criticize Stefanski for that, but he had a lot of receivers open. Baker missed a lot of open receivers, and he's oftentimes a one-read quarterback. So if he wants to improve and he's the starter in 2022, he's going to have to play a lot better. And so a quarterback play overall, whether it's Baker Mayfield, a rookie in the draft, a veteran free agent, whoever it is, that has to be first and foremost most improved. Now, second thing he had was revamping the wide receiving core, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. There wasn't a number one. Landry was banged up. Landry, we can get into that a little bit later. He's likely, I think, if they renegotiate him, he'll come back at a lower dollar figure. I wouldn't be surprised if he would like to move on. He doesn't want his thing revamped. That wouldn't. Either way, the passing game has to be significantly better. That was the biggest difference between the teams that were in the playoff and the Super Bowl and the Browns. They had passing attacks. The Browns' passing attack struggled this year. Absolutely. And as you and Mary Kay talked about a little bit ago on the show, you know, you had the Burrow and Chase. You had Stafford and Kupp. You had Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. You have Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill. All these teams have a 1-2 punch at quarterback, wide receiver, and the Browns simply do not have that. I think we put a lot of expectations on Donovan Peoples-Jones this year based off his phenomenal training camp. And yes, he should have high expectations, but he didn't live up to those. And that's not all his fault. But as Mary Kay alluded to, he did not play up to his potential down the stretch. But we have to get better on the outside. Have to have guys who can beat coverage, because if you look at a lot of Browns game, a lot of guys just play us straight up and like, okay, you're not beating us, so we're just going to stand by you and hopefully pick off Baker or force a turnover another way. But yeah, we have to get faster, have to get guys that can make plays, get a lot of separation, because that's what a lot of this scheme is. Stefanski can only get them open so much, but they have to do their part and get open. But speed on the outside is what we desperately need, the people who can separate from defenders.
All right, so the big question, do you think it's a lock? Is it a lock? Or what percentage do you think is the likelihood that the Browns take a receiver at 13 or with their first pick in the first round if they decide to trade up or trade down?
Okay, so 13 is not a lock. As we all know, the draft can take us any which way. The Browns can trade up for someone. They can trade down if someone wants to move up for someone in their spot. But if they do pick at 13, I would say it's probably 85 to 90% chance that it is a wide receiver. Obviously, the draft is going to be very dependent on free agency and how that shakes up, because if we go out and get two veteran guys, like Amari Cooper was mentioned earlier, if we trade for him and then sign a Christian Kirk, that instantly upgrades everything at the receiver position. Hopefully that makes the quarterback play better. I would say 85 to 90% it is wide receiver at 13, even if they do get some guys like Cooper and Kirk or whoever else you want to insert. Mike Williams has been floated around lately as a potential landing spot. Cleveland is for him. But I'd say 85, 90%. And what's great about that is last year was Jamar Chase, hands down number one. There's a couple guys you can put in this list that's number one. You can put, Treylon Burks. You can put Jameson Williams if he's healthy. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. You can put any of those guys in. And I think every one of those guys instantly upgrades this wide receiver room, even as a rookie.
All right, before we go to break, this is from the Bleacher Report, predicting NFL's most surprising cuts of the 2022 offseason. And they list Jarvis Landry as one. Cap hit 16.4, savings would be 14.9. Nationally, that might be a surprise. Locally, I think it's pretty split. I don't think anybody is certain that Jarvis Landry is coming back. And it might not be the Browns' decision. It might be Jarvis who really asks not to come back. Nobody knows if he really wants to be back. I think the thing that I would struggle with is that cap hit for a guy that's an inside guy, a slot guy. That's a pretty high number to pay a guy that's a number two. Now, he's a really good number two. He does a great job, and there are a lot of things he does well, but you still need an outside threat that's usually the big money guy.
Yeah, he's a good complementary player. He's not what he was in Miami, obviously, and that's because Stefanski likes to run 2 and 3 tight ends at a time. They clog up the same space. Landry goes across the middle. That's where the Hoopers and Njokus and Harrison Bryants of the world, they live off of too. But I don't think he is on this roster come September unless he takes a pay cut, which I'm all for every single player that ever plays professional sports getting their money. And if he does not want to restructure and take a smaller deal, then you cannot simply pay him almost $17 million to put up, I think he was like the 60th or 63rd or whatever he was. He was very down low on the list this year, had a down year, struggled with injuries for the second year in a row. I don't think he's on this roster unless he takes a massive pay cut, because he does do things well for us. But at the same time, if you have to cut bait with him, maybe he wants to go somewhere else. Maybe he wants to, revitalize his career somewhere. You guys talked earlier, the Tennessee Titans are somewhere that could trade for him. If he's traded, that would be a little bit better because we get some sort of asset in return. But he would have to restructure elsewhere, like Mary Kay said, because no team is going to want to take on almost $17 million for a receiver who's not a number one receiver.
Yep, fair enough. All right, Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We're talking Browns with Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. Stay with us.
Berlin, 1936. Amid the rumblings of war, Adolf Hitler opens the Olympics by saying the stadium will be a shrine to Aryan supremacy, where Germany will triumph. A college student and graduate of Cleveland's East Tech High School proves Hitler wrong. Jesse Owens stuns the world by setting 3 world records on his way to an unprecedented 4 track and field gold medals. Cleveland's Jesse Owens.
We continue to talk Browns, and we are going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about some ideas for the Browns in the upcoming draft.
Hey, Browns community. I just wanted to know, how would you guys feel about drafting Treylon Burks, a big, fast receiver, at number 13, and draft Carson Strong, QB, in the 2nd round to compete with Baker during the camp, especially if Baker's not 100%? Thank you.
All right. Appreciate the voicemail. Eddie, let's welcome in Eddie McDonald from Dogtown Daily. I like Burks at 13. Strong, I got a lot of questions about him, but what are your thoughts? You study this much more than I do. What do you think about the voicemailer's idea?
I would love Burks at 13. Like I said earlier, one of the four or five top guys, if you got any of them at 13, that'd be ideal. I like him or Wilson. If you ask me tomorrow, I might say Garrett Wilson. You ask me a week from now, I might go back to Burks. But I think Burks is a phenomenal talent and someone who is really going to upgrade any wide receiver and whatever one he steps into this year. I don't know if he's going to have a Jamar Chase-like season in his rookie year or Justin Jefferson rookie year, but he's going to have a pretty good rookie year. Like you say, he's a big, fast, strong guy. I would love to see him in orange and brown, and if that's the way we go, I will be elated on night 1 of the draft. And then Carson Strong, I don't know much about him. I haven't looked into too many quarterbacks yet this year because I don't know if that's the route the Browns are going to go. If they do, it will be later, I think. I don't think they're going to use a 2nd-round pick on him because there are elsewhere holes to fill. We'll know more about that, like I said, in free agency. But Burks at 13, I would love. And I would not go quarterback at number 2, especially with Carson Strong. I don't know much about him. Like, there's some guys you know about because, like, you've seen them. I haven't seen much on him. There's a lot of people in a lot of different camps that, aren't very high on him. Some team is obviously going to take a chance on him. I don't think the Browns should do that in the 2nd round. If he's there in the 3rd or 4th, maybe. I don't know if he gets to that round, but I would not go him in 2nd.
You got to remember, edge rusher, defensive tackle, another wide receiver. There's a lot of areas that you're going to have to fill. Now, one of the guys that I know you have studied, Malik Willis. You wrote an article about why the Browns should at least think about him and look at Malik Willis. Take us through that thought process. And also, tell me what you like about him.
I like that he's a dual-threat quarterback. He can do it all. And in today's NFL, you don't have many just pocket passers. Almost all of the top 5, 10, 15 guys outside of Tom Brady, because he's the anomaly of every situation of quarterbacks ever over the past 20 years. They all have the ability to escape the pocket and make plays. And Baker does that sometimes, but he leaves the pocket when it's clean. But a guy like Wills, he has a strong arm. He can make a lot of throws. He can escape pressure. He can just have design run plays. You don't have many design run plays for Baker Mayfield. And he's a guy that, like I said, in today's NFL, you have to have somewhat of a dual threat quarterback, not exclusively like a guy like Justin Herbert. He's not a dual threat, but he does make plays with his feet. Someone like Joe Burrow obviously makes plays with his feet and mostly with his arm, but he can take off. Matthew Stafford is in that Justin Herbert range where he can take off if need be, but you're not going to design a run for him. But Willis, you can make any play for him. You have the option plays; those open up things for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson if they're all 3 are still there. I really love his game. I really love what he could do. Yes, he would be somewhat of a project, and I think that if you don't go out and get, and Baker Mayfield's still there, all depend on how he plays in 2022. I think Willis could be a guy that can step in year 2. And possibly year 3 if they want to tag Baker next year and then take over for this team.
So basically, if the Browns, and here's just to summarize and real quickly, if they don't take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, they're likely drafting him as an insurance or a developmental guy to make sure that if Baker doesn't bounce back, they have somebody that they can at least feel like they're developing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that they go quarterback in the 1st or 2nd unless they can get Malik Willis. If he's there at 13, as Mary Kay had in her first mock draft, I don't know if the Browns pass on that. But then again, I don't know if Malik Willis gets to number 13. I don't know if he'll be the first quarterback or the second quarterback off the board, him and Pickett from Pitt. But I don't know if they get to even outside the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see. If the Browns want to, they could obviously trade up. I would not trade up for him, but if he's there at 13, I would heavily consider that. But I would also go wide. I would have to take wide receiver, but I would still consider Willis at 13 a great value.
Eddie McDonald from Dog Pound Daily. As always, Eddie, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Eddie McDonald. Make sure you read him, Dog Pound Daily. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you again back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, Tim Bielek from The Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, right here on Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.